So I was lucky enough to get my hands on one of these rackets. I almost bought one, but luckily I had a friend, and that saved me some time and some money because he's local. So he already had it, and yeah, just let me borrow it for a little bit. So shout outs to you, you know who you are. I won't say your name for privacy reasons. Anyway, this is the Angell Sport Injection High Modulus Carbon, but they call it ASI 2.0. Is there a 1.0? I'm not sure, but this is the ASI 2.0, and that is short for Angell Sport Injection. And the interesting thing about this frame is that it's a hybrid of kind of a standard manufactured frame as well as an injection molded part. So around the throat area here, if I give you a close-up, you can see the finish goes from kind of a satin green to a more matte plastic finish. There's some gloss accents too, depending on where you look at the frame, but really on the outside here is probably the most obvious area where it is injection molded. And that goes all the way down to the handle, by the way. So there is no grip mold, like there's no foam that kind of creates this octagonal grip shape. It's all part of the injection mold portion of this racket. And I don't know if you noticed already, but the throat hole opening is very small, and that looks unusual. Definitely no way that you're going to get a tennis ball through here. You ever go for like a volley or something and you miss so bad that the ball just gets stuck in the throat? This one might actually dink it back over the net. You never know. The odds of that are certainly much better with a racket like this, which is one of the benefits of this racket that they should probably market a little more, honestly. They're missing out on some opportunity to advertise other benefits of this racket. So that's the most unique thing about this racket, the fact that it's a hybrid injection molded frame, but also it is a 1620 string pattern, which is probably one of the more rare string patterns out there. I'm sure there's some crazy ones, but those are basically irrelevant. It's basically 1619, 1820, 1620, or 1819, which I've seen on a couple rackets. I don't know which one's more common actually, 1819 or 1620. I'll let you guys hash that out. One funny thing about Angell too, I've noticed, and that's how it's said. It said Angell. I know it has two L's on it. I used to say Angell, but someone told me it's Angell, so I'm just gonna go with Angell. I think Tennis Nerd says Angell. So there's a lot of propaganda out there about how it's supposed to be said, but I think it's Angell. Just gonna set that straight. But yeah, I was gonna say that on the website, you will hardly notice any real close-up shots of a lot of their rackets. Like you might wanna see it strung up so that you can see what the string pattern actually looks like. So let me step out of the way here and actually give you some close-ups that give you more data on what this racket actually looks like. All right, so you can see this lime green. Is it lime? Nah, you know what? It's not quite lime. Let me think of a name for it. Something that's more descriptive. It's kind of like an electric forest green, if you will. What looks like this in the real world? Let me think. I don't know. Maybe it'll come to me later. More close-ups of the throat here. Yeah, you can see it's kind of split down the middle here. And also here, at some point in the video, I'll cut to a clip of me showing you why this racket makes a funny whistling noise when you swing it, which is actually kind of annoying. It also makes this annoying whistling sound. Like, it's like a little... You don't hear like an actual whistle though? Sounds like a bird chirping. It's not like a real issue, but it makes a whistling sound, kind of like those dampeners that are supposed to indicate that you're swinging fast. Silly. And you can see here that the throat mains are a little bit closer together than the rest. If you look right here, you can see that these are kind of closer together, but then there's a bit of a gap that opens up here. So the string pattern is more dense along the center mains, but pretty quickly starts to spread out. I think Angell's become kind of well known for having really open string patterns, regardless of like if it's a 1619 or an 1820, it's always super open. The strings are always really spread out. Sometimes that's a criticism of this company's rackets, but you know, maybe some people like that or some people just don't really think that. But honestly, everyone I know that talks about it is kind of bothered by the fact that their string pattern is so open. So that's just something to know. But if you're a fan of Angell, maybe you know that, maybe you like that. There's the butt cap for you. Again, it's actually not even a butt cap because you can't remove it. It's just part of the handle mold. So the racket mold just flares out like this into the shape of a butt cap, but there is no such butt cap. You guys want to see what's inside of this trap door? I do. Let's see here. I have no idea. It just popped right off. Huh, interesting. You know, this looks more icy. Huh. Okay, that makes sense, I guess. Ooh, that's how you know it's a genuine Angell product, I guess. So that little hole that's split down the middle, that looks pretty traditional, because typically the way that a frame is made is that you have one long tube that goes into a mold, and it actually goes up and creates the shape of the head, and then comes back down to be the other side of the handle, and that's why you see that split section down the middle. A lot of rackets have this. Pretty much every racket has this, actually, so even this one, despite the fact that it's a hybrid. But I can see here that there's a mold outside of this, so I think there's a traditional racket mold underneath this outer injection molded shell, if you want to think about it that way, although maybe that's not quite the right word. Whatever exterior portion of this racket. It's also a super light racket. I think the swing weight is about 260 points or units. I don't really know what the unit is, but that is the swing weight number is 260. So strung up, it might be around 285, 290, depending on the strings that you use and the thickness of them and whether or not you have a dampener on there. So the strung swing weight will generally be around 290, and that's very light. And from what I hear, there's kind of a decent amount of weight in the handle, but also in the throat. So this kind of balance and weight leaves a lot of room to actually add weight to the 6 and 9 or the 12 or whatever you want to do. And yeah, this racket is highly customizable in that regard. One of the reasons it was on my radar is because the swing weight was so low that I thought, oh, that means I can probably extend it and still have swing weight left to manage. But the way it's manufactured actually makes that super hard. I'd have to cut off probably the whole butt cap section and then try to build that back up, and I'm just not really interested in doing that. So I mean, ideally I never really have to modify a racket to extend it in the first place, but yeah, that was one of the reasons I was initially intrigued by this racket. So let's get to the part of the video where I actually talk about how it plays. Oh yeah, one more thing. A lot of the Angell rackets kind of have this grommet system that goes all the way down the outer edge of the racket head. This one does not, and it probably saves quite a bit of weight in the head for not doing that. Good job, Angell. It's a windy day. Look at those trees. Quick slow-mo shot right here for my clothing brand, isn't.co on Instagram. You can see that shirt. It represents that time isn't money, because time is priceless. But we grow up in a generation, and many generations before us, that tried to teach us that time is money. But time is priceless. That's the truth. Anyway, we're here to talk about this Angell ASI 2.0. But also, I gotta complain about the wind a little bit, because I got blood red mad here and there. The wind was changing direction constantly, making balls very hard to read the depth. But we had some decent rallies here and there, so it's all good. I've actually had a bit more time with this racket than this video. I've hit with it several times outside of this. Yes, the ASI is an interesting racket. You might be wondering, did it feel too light? Did it feel difficult to generate power? What about spin? Was it comfortable? Control-oriented? If you're seeing this, I figure you might have seen some of the other reviews out there as well, and I think my opinion is going to differ a little bit. First of all, I didn't think that this racket struggled too much to generate power. I've definitely played with rackets where I would describe them as kind of annoyingly low-powered. I might even describe that VCore Pro 97 to be of that kind of racket, but this is not quite on that level. I'd also describe the VCore 95 to be kind of annoyingly difficult to generate power. Again, this is not quite on that level. Can't call it a high power racket like you would a lot of light rackets, but it's not weak. I don't think you will feel underpowered with this racket. If you're the type of player that can generate your own power, this racket will deliver it. Whereas some of those rackets I was just talking about seem to keep finding ways to suck the power away at the top end, no matter what. If you swing harder, it will take your power away more. This is not one of those. So rest assured, I don't think power will be an issue. It's also very light, so you can get the head speed up very quickly. And something about the balance is actually more stable than the weight and swing weight might imply. It didn't feel rock solid going through the ball like a Pro Staff autograph might, but certainly not an unstable, floppy racket. It seems to feel and play heavier than it actually is on paper. So that's pretty cool. It is definitely not a spin monster. Not that anyone out there was saying it was. Again, if you can generate your own spin, this racket will deliver, but it is certainly not a pure arrow
or any of those types of rackets, even on the V-Core 98 that I hit with usually, I was able to generate more spin more easily. So the difference is somewhat noticeable. I was given this racket strung with RPM Blast, somewhere in the mid to low 50s, and that's a string I know pretty well, but I always end up going with cheaper, very similar strings, such as Vocal Cyclone, or even Y-Tex Quadro Twist, which is a little more than Cyclone, but certainly cheaper than RPM Blast. I believe Tennis Nerd said something along the lines of this racket feeling somewhat old school. I definitely would not say that. Maybe I've felt enough modern rackets that sort of lean in the direction of a more old school feel, but I would still associate those rackets to feel modern. At the most, a modernized old school feel is maybe how I would describe this racket. But I'd actually go as far as to say that V-Core 97 Pro that I mentioned earlier, in a lot of ways feels more old school than this one. So take that as you will, but that is my opinion. I played with this racket in its stock weight. I didn't do anything to add weight or change the balance. The grip that came with this racket is the one that it was shipped with. But I did put my own overgrip on it, of course. Vocal V-Dry in this case, which is usually what I use. And to be honest, I didn't really find anything outstanding or super surprising about this racket. It kind of feels like a handful of rackets I've tried. In somewhat a generic way, it just doesn't feel like something I've never felt before. It kind of feels like a lot of rackets I've felt. And in some regards, I feel like it played like a lot of rackets I've felt have. And I've been in this demo phase, if you will, for quite some time. I'm actually wondering if I'll ever truly switch to a racket. And if I don't, that's fine. Doing racket reviews in somewhat has become somewhat of a thing I do now. So maybe it is my destiny to always be looking for my next racket. I think realistically I might end up having a few rackets that I really like, that cover a ballpark of preferences. But the more I've gotten to know this racket, I don't really see this making it to my tennis bag, so to speak. It's one of those rackets that does everything pretty well. I don't think it has any outstanding characteristics that really specialize in this or that play style or strength, which in some ways is really good. But something I want out of a racket personally is, off the bat, something that can more easily generate spin. I am a spin-heavy player. It is largely how I control and shape my shots. Sometimes my spin can be a bit overwhelming for my opponents, and I don't like it when a racket takes that away from me. And what does it give me in return for taking that? I'm not getting more power. I don't necessarily feel like I'm getting better touch. Precision, I think that's debatable. A lot of things like control and precision, I think that is largely a matter of just getting really comfortable with your racket. There's a lot of talk out there about generating your own power, which is something a lot of players will tell intermediate players that are trying to advance and are looking for a racket. They will often tell them that, well, you need to generate your own power. So you don't want a racket that just gives you power, you want something that gives you more control. But I think once you step into the category of rackets that are sort of tweener rackets, they're relatively, respectably heavy, and they're somewhere between maybe 95 and 100 square inches, I think all those rackets are kind of that racket. These are not free power rackets anymore. Even a racket like the Pure Arrow or Pure Drive, I would not consider them to be free power. If you compare them to the rackets out there that true beginners use, that are like 9.8 ounces, head heavy, and have like 110 or 115 inch head size, that's a racket that's giving you a lot of free power at the sacrifice of things like control and touch. Honestly, once you're playing with the tweener type of rackets, I don't really think you're in that conversation anymore. So with that in mind, I just don't personally see the value in me switching to this kind of racket. And my whole point is, if people are telling you that you need to generate your own power, and you're already in a category of rackets that are considered to be in that tweener category, maybe it's actually smart to consider that you need to be able to generate your own control, your own precision, because you shouldn't rely on that to come from a racket. Just like you shouldn't rely on a racket to generate power. I am of the philosophy that I want to enjoy the power and the spin a racket offers me, because those are already strengths of my game. So who is this racket good for? Someone that likes an all-around racket. I mean, my friend in the video is playing with a Head Prestige. He has a couple models of them, so I don't know which one he has in this video. But in a lot of ways, this racket is very similar to that. And it's very lightweight. So if you're the type that likes to customize the balance and stability of your racket, this could be a good choice. But if you're also just curious about a racket that is made unlike other rackets, and you want to see or feel the benefits of that. But it's also really hard to come by a racket that has a 16 by 20 string pattern. There's a few out there, but they're rare. Diadem has the Elevate. It's an interesting racket. There's of course the VCore 95 off the top of my head, and now there is the Angell ASI 2.0. And I'm sure there's a few more out there. So there's definitely a handful of reasons to try this racket, and I think there's certainly an audience for it. It goes without saying, if you want to support my channel, my content, my videos, me, go ahead and subscribe to the channel, like this video, and feel free to leave a comment if you have any questions or comments. You can also find my tennis channel on Instagram at Time for Tennis, just like you see it here on the YouTube. And if you want to check out my clothing brand, check out isn't.co on Instagram. It's not a tennis brand per se, but I am a tennis player, and this is my clothing brand, so naturally I playtest a lot of things in the world of tennis, and I also do have some dampeners, which you can see on the page. I play with them all the time, they're great, so check it out. I'll see you there, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks again for watching.